It turns out Tyler Robinson almost got away clean, leaving the scene with no evidence, except for a detailed text message confession about how he used his firearm to eliminate the acquired target, and then got into his vehicle and was on the lam for 0800 hours. Pay no attention to the fact that we now know that the FBI has footage of the shooter taking the shot, and they specifically cut the video they released to start just after that part. Obviously, not because he never took the shot, probably never even had the rifle on the roof, but because of redacted. Pay no attention to the old man actively causing a distraction to help the shooter escape, or to the more than 10 strange flying objects that have been located in the cell phone footage, or to the fact that the wound doesn't match the shot, or to the fact that we are being shown a fabricated text message chain, or to the new photo that surfaced of Bro stopping by Dairy Queen for a little blizzy while he's the subject of a statewide manhunt. Trust the FBI to get to the bottom of it, just like they did with the Epstein files.
They said that he took it apart and then put it back together again. Do you know how much time it would take to do that if you were highly skilled?
To disassemble a gun.
To disassemble a rifle so that you can get it in a
backpack.
And then somehow reconnects it once he gets off the roof? What? I don't buy the reassembly. I do not buy that. They said he had a screwdriver up there. Fuck yourself.
Welcome to Liberty Lockdown. This is Clint Russell, and PSYOP season is upon us, ladies and gentlemen. Holy crap. I've never seen a more benign speech given by someone and more outrage created by it than that which happened with Tucker Carlson yesterday and today. And the outrage is just blazing. It's unbelievable. It feels like an op to me, honestly. I'm going to play you that clip in a second. But before I do, I wanted to just get into some of the things that have happened since we last talked, you and I. Obviously, there's been a lot of additional information when it comes to the attack on Charlie Kirk. And from my vantage point, it has not been satisfactory. I don't feel satisfied as the narrative that we're being told. Ian just did a good job just laying out a kind of a laundry list of the inaccuracies, or I don't know, just stuff that doesn't quite add up. So I'm not going to recap all of that, but I did want to say I have not talked about in any of the prior episodes bullet trajectory, different locations. I hope you guys have noticed. I have not gone down the avenue of Mr. CIA sleeve palm gun. I've never even mentioned the people doing umpire signs or a third base or first base coach, like he's a MLB coach. I don't think most of these are anything. That's my honest opinion. Could I be wrong? Sure. But when I look at it, like, assume for a second that you believe that this was an op being ran to take Charlie Kirk out, not just from this one lone nutter, but rather a full-on op by intel agencies, our own government or foreign, whatever. I don't see any reason in the world to have someone standing in the line of fire to signal as if they couldn't, and to do a physical signaling as if we don't live in an electronic age where maybe you have, if you do want it to happen at a particular time, you wouldn't have a button on your phone that you hit and it goes to the gunman and they trigger. No, you're going to actually stand with, I don't know, 10,000 people or thousands of people all standing around, live video recording. This is why I really have tried to distill down things that are potentially viable and things that I think are nonsensical. And I haven't even brought up the nonsensical things because I think they're a waste of your time. So for those that are upset with me doing these episodes on this topic, one, I don't care. I think that what matters most is the truth and justice. And that's what I'm actually interested in here. And I think that's how you honor Charlie Kirk, as much as remembering his memory and his legacy and everything else, is to make sure that they have the right guy. Is that not a primary concern? And I've been just bombarded with criticisms from people, not to me specifically most of the time. Some of it has been directed at me specifically, but there's this kind of whiplash anger that's being stirred up by people that are going, oh, everybody that's talking about this is just doing it for clicks and blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, no. Do you trust the FBI? The same institution which covered up for the Epstein situation for years and years, decades? No, you don't. Do you trust the local cops? Probably not. Do you trust the news media? Certainly not. Do you trust the politicians to tell you the truth? Absolutely not. So do you have any agency, institution that you consider to be reputable. No, I don't. And neither do you. So that's the reason I'm doing it. Because regardless of whether or not I'm right, I'm at least interested in getting to the bottom of this. I'm at least interested in the truth. Are there some people that are doing this for clickbait reasons and to manipulate algos? Sure, I'm sure there are. That's inevitable with any topic. But I think at the end of the day, is it valuable? Is it valuable to have people digging? Yes. Yes, it is. Because if you care about justice, if you care about the truth, well, then digging can't hurt that. And if you think that they're doing it for nefarious purposes, don't watch. It's real simple. But this whole trust the experts thing is bizarre to me, especially after the lockdown and COVID era, to have people immediately reverting to, we don't know the bullet caliber, so we can't talk about whether or not this is viable. The biggest story that came out in the past 24, 48 hours is that despite being allegedly a 30-06, it went directly into his neck and it stuck there. As you noticed, I have not talked about this up until now because this is not my expertise. I am talking out of school. I am being open about that. But I have shotguns, okay? Like, I'm not a total idiot with this stuff. And I don't think you have to be an expert to go, that doesn't quite make sense. And I'm sure most of you watching are not experts when it comes to trajectory, bullet dynamics, and the physics of firing a gun and everything else. And you need to be that to then come to the conclusion that, really? His neck stopped it? And according to the surgeon or the coroner and the TPUSA guy who talked about this, it's because it was a miracle. Because had it not, it would have injured or killed people behind it. Look, it's a nice story. And if it is true, great. If it actually happened and it saved someone's life behind him, fantastic. He gets to be lionized and even more of a hero than he already was. Fantastic. That's not really the point I'm making. The point I'm making is it doesn't sound viable. It doesn't sound realistic. Do you honestly think that 150 yards out, the 30-06 is going to just stop in its tracks in one of the softest parts of a human body? Does that make any sense to you? It shouldn't. So, as I said when this news first broke, there's a distinct possibility that it hit the spine and then it basically directed downward. Okay, that's a possibility. Also, in my very initial reporting was that this is a product of a bulletproof vest ricochet. And that's the reason, because if it were to ricochet, obviously the trajectory and the velocity would have decreased tremendously. Therefore, perhaps there is no through and through. Okay, that's possible. But then the reporting comes out not wearing a vest. In the New York Times, I think it was the New York Times, maybe it was the Post, his wife, Erica, is talking about it. And she says the day before this event, she was imploring him to wear a vest, to wear body armor. And he said no. So I'm going to take her at her word. There has been conflicting reporting on this, so I will revise if it changes. But in the meantime, I am under the impression that he was not wearing a vest. Therefore, this entire theory that it hits basically the surface area at the very top of the vest that's not adequate to stop it, therefore it redirects it into his neck, I don't think that's what happened. So that means that what we're seeing in this video, and I can't show it to you, and you know why, is a entry wound. That does not look like an entry wound. And if it were, it still doesn't make sense that there wouldn't be an exit wound because it's such a soft part of human anatomy. That doesn't mean that I'm right. It just means that would be very unusual if that's what happened. And I don't even like talking about this portion of the story because it is so graphic, even to just talk about it. It's graphic to think about. And it's sad. At the end of the day, this is a loss of a life and a good person. And none of this should have happened, and he didn't deserve this, and I hate to talk about it. But again, if I'm interested in justice for this guy, what I consider to be basically a colleague of mine, I have to talk about it. I have to be honest about it. I'm not coming up with any conclusions. I haven't done that at all. There's a lot of people out there that have said definitively, X did it, or these people definitely didn't do it. I haven't said that at all. Tyler very well could have been the lone gunman. He also could have just been a participant in this op as well. I'm not trying to remove culpability. A lot of people are like, we have to destroy the left, Clint. You cannot be talking about this being anything other than the left because this is our opportunity to destroy them. So shut up. That's not how I want to live my life. I'm not interested in becoming a mouthpiece for your vengeance against the left, despite how absolutely miserable they made my life over the past 15 years in terms of censorship and the whole woke environment. I hated it as much as you, at least. But setting that aside, I'm not going to lie and try and frame my political opponents to then lend credence to the government's plans to demolish them. If you want to go after the left, go after them because they've broken the law. How about that? Are we just going to throw away law and order in pursuit of political vendettas and vengeance? I would say that's a very foolhardy way to approach things. Other people disagree. That's your prerogative to do. I don't think that's a good course of action. I think that you ought to uphold the justice system because it's already in tatters, especially after the lawfare that was wielded against Donald Trump. And a lot of people, because of that, now want to utilize it for their own ends. I think it will ultimately destroy this country. Sorry. I'm in alignment with the classical liberals that have described me as woke right when it comes to this matter. That's how I feel. I think it's true. I think that it's too hard fought to get a justice system that actually does do a decent job. It certainly wasn't perfect, but then to just use it to crush your political opponents, it's a mistake. Especially when many in your political opposition are genuine criminals. You don't have to concoct or craft bullshit to go after them. Just tell the truth. Actually pursue it. So let's do that. All right. Now, as for whether or not I should be talking about bullet trajectory or any of that stuff, look, I would rather not. As I said, not an expert in that area by any stretch. However, you could give us an autopsy. You could confirm what the caliber of the bullet was. We don't even know that for sure. We've been told repeatedly it's .30-06, but that's because of the Mauser rifle. And it's almost like an assumption at this point, but I don't think that we actually know. Because if it is a lower velocity piece of ammunition, perhaps it would not go through and through. Like that, there are explicable reasons as to why this story might be accurate, but not with the ingredients that we have as of now. If it's .30-06, I'm sorry, but I don't buy it.
Right out the back. Yep. Completely unstopped, straight through.
Filled the whole frame.
You can see the bullet go straight through.
I didn't care.
The watermelon didn't know it was shot until there was already an exit wound.
I don't think that it would just stop in the surface area of the neck. Like that seems unlikely. Be cautious about it. It seems unlikely to me. And I don't think most people are buying it.
So I was in line with people for 3 hours talking to all the folks, and they were happy and prayerful, and none of them that I spoke to believed that the shooter that they got and have arrested actually did it. And they are
the War Room Posse, it's 0%.
They were they were angry.
Same with our chat.
And here's the other thing about digging and why digging is valuable is that when you tell people to shut up, they assume that there's something that they're not supposed to look at. And maybe there's not. But if you're telling people to shut up, they're going to talk more and they're going to talk louder. So if that's your intention, if you just want people to be calm and quiet and allow for the three-letter agencies to do their investigation because you trust in the results that they're going to deliver, which I think is fucking nuts, but you're free to do that if that's your worldview. But if that's what you want, well, then you shouldn't be shouting people like me down. Because guess what? Just a couple days ago, actually just yesterday, Kash Patel comes out and he says, we're deploying all of our assets, all of our resources to make sure that obviously they think that they have the gunman, but they're going to dig deeper. They're going to actually look into the people who were shouting that they were responsible, the people that were arrested right after, the people that were giving hand signals, a whole bunch of things that were theories that were generated by the internet, by people like me that were digging. That's what's now being addressed by the head of the FBI. That's a good thing. And also, let me just one more additional point before I get into the Tucker topic. If you want to see Charlie Kirk's killer put behind bars for the rest of his life or worse, then if he's going to have a defense attorney worth a damn, they're going to ask these questions too. This is not, trust me, if a bunch of harebrained podcasters that are just doing clickbait and blah, blah, blah are going to ask these questions, a defense attorney is going to ask them as well. So this actually strengthens the case for the prosecution, assuming that Tyler is in fact the guilty party. These are questions that are going to come up. So we're not doing damage to this. We're not. Now, if you want to push back against the people who have said adamantly, he didn't do it, XYZ did it, fine. I'm not one of those people. I haven't said that at all. I've literally just said, here's motives, here's potentials, that like this is basically what a prosecution would look at if they hadn't already concluded that this is our guy. And that's a good way to look at prosecution. That's a good way to look at investigations, because you want to make sure you get it right. Because I'm not interested in making sure that the FBI has a 100% conviction rate. I'm interested in the real perpetrator spending their life behind bars or worse. That's what I want to see happen. And to that end, I'm going to keep pursuing this. Will I do it every day in and out? No. I'm not going to dedicate my show for the next 6 months to figuring this out. But when there's new developments, I'm going to dig in and make sure that we're being told the truth. Because as of now, there's a whole lot of holes in this plot. And I think it's important that we fill those holes and we figure out what the fuck happened. All right, let's talk about Tucker.
It actually reminds me of my favorite story ever. So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it, and they just go bonkers. They hate it, and they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking. We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us? We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I can just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem.
So to me, that seems like a fairly benign analogy. Essentially, what Tucker Carlson is saying is that Jesus Christ was killed for telling unpopular truths, and the people in power took him out because they thought that would silence him and therefore silence his ideas and therefore maintain their stranglehold on power. He then analogizes that to what happened to Charlie Kirk, saying that he was taken out for speaking unpopular truths in a time that you weren't allowed to do. That's the extent of the analogy that I took when I first heard it. That's not what people are hearing. And it's largely because he said, I can imagine people sitting around in smoke-filled rooms eating hummus, as if hummus is exclusively a Jewish dish. It's not. It is definitely originated and very popular in the broader Middle Eastern area. It's a reach, to put it mildly. But we've got Arsen Ostrovsky saying, Tucker Carlson is a modern-day neo-Nazi. What a disgusting and loathsome human being. To use Charlie Kirk's funeral to launch into an unhinged anti-Semitic conspiracy theory tirade is an unconscionable defilement of Charlie's memory and everything he stood for. Now, just as I said earlier, I'm not a gun expert, nor am I a theologian. However, I don't think that it's a conspiracy theory to say what happened to Jesus, according to the Bible. According to biblical scholars that I've heard, I've watched videos on, that I've listened to, that I've read. In fact, that is what transpired. That yes, the Pharisees turned Jesus over to the Romans for him then to be crucified and put to death. So I think he is saying that, but I don't think what he was doing was comparing the motives behind the two killings. He was not saying that the perpetrators were the same people. And I think that the people that are assuming he's saying that, it says much more about you than it does about Tucker Carlson. If that's the conclusion you came to because he said eating hummus, boy, are you reaching. And I've been very open about the fact that I think that's a possibility even. And yet I don't think that's what Tucker was hinting at. I don't. And if I did, I would say so. I think he was just comparing the motives, that people in power don't like truth tellers. That's true. That is universally true. People in power, especially corrupt people in power, I should say, don't like it when people tell the truth about those in power. And he's saying that Jesus did it and so did Charlie. And hey, they both happen to have been killed. So there's the comparison. If you want to stretch and extrapolate further and use this as an opportunity to try and cancel Tucker Carlson, be my guest. I don't think it's going to work. It certainly shouldn't work. But I'm going to question your motives because I think you are actually doing what you're accusing Tucker Carlson of doing. That you are trying to create controversy where there is none. And I'm going to get some flack for this, and I don't really care. I think that Candace Owens, whatever you think of her motives, most of the work that she has done on this case over the past 10 days has been valuable from getting this photo of the kid in Dairy Queen to a whole bunch of other reports that she actually saw the footage. She spoke to a Turning Point USA person, the guy who reaches in and grabs the memory cards from the cameras that were TPUSA property. And she got him, allegedly, according to her, to send her that footage, or at least allow her to view it. And she was the first person to report that there was no blood from behind, implying that there was no exit wound.
There's nothing gory about this footage from the back. The thing that really stood out to me, and I just kept asking him to replay it over and over and over again, is that there's no blood. There's no blood from the back. There is no blood. What are we to take from that? The only thing that could make sense, if what they're saying is true and that person took the shot from the place that they are saying that individual took the shot from, it would suggest that it was inside of Charlie, right? And they would know that. The feds would have known that. So they would have communicated that they were never looking for a bullet. Because remember, one shot. So I'm very confused. I'm very confused, not by what I saw, but what I didn't see. Okay.
Which was then confirmed a day later because of the TPUSA employee and allegedly the surgeon or the autopsy or the coroner who said that, yes, the neck stopped the bullet. So if that's the case, then that's what the video should show. We haven't seen that video, but Candace Owens had that information before that report came out. So my point is that I think Candace has been doing a service, regardless of what you think of her motives. Maybe she is just interested in having the biggest stream. She certainly has been. Millions of views on every episode. Congrats to her. I don't really care. I don't care if that's her motive or not. Are you doing good work or are you not? Are you getting us closer to the truth or are you taking us further away? In many of those instances, she got us more information that will get us closer to the truth. For that, I applaud her. As I said earlier, does that mean that I think she's right about everything? No, I don't. I'm not sure that I'm right about everything, as I've been very open about. But that's how I actually measure people. Are you getting us closer to the truth or are you taking us further away? And I think she has. I think Tucker Carlson has. And I think Ian Carroll usually does too. So that's the reason I go to bat for these people. That's the reason I think that they're a valuable asset in this world. And guess what all of them have in common? Over the past week, it started with Candace Owens. Candace Owens was being pushed to be canceled. There was just people, a lot of them with a similar flag in their handles, but they were all coming out saying Candace Owens is a lunatic. She's an anti-Semite. She's hateful. She's this, she's that. You cannot have her on your platforms anymore. I'm imploring all conservative podcasters or whatever to stop having her on their show, as if that would actually defeat Candace Owens, as if she doesn't have a bigger platform than all of the people that might have her on for the most part. Whatever. Anyways, but then it was followed up with a mini cancellation attempt against Ian Carroll. I'll admit, I think Ian Carroll got, as Dave Smith said, out ahead of his skis. And Ian has acknowledged as much, that he said it basically definitively, and he shouldn't have, because he doesn't know for sure. I think that was a mistake, but I think that his heart is still in the right place, that he is actually interested in the truth at the end of the day. And I think he will absolutely, for instance, if there is footage of Tyler on that roof firing that gun, I think Ian will be the first to acknowledge, okay, I think we got our guy. That's my guess. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think he probably would. I certainly would. And just to rewind for a second, why the fuck don't we have that footage? We do have footage of allegedly Tyler running allegedly with his rifle, which we can't see, and jumping off that roof and then going across the lawn and into the parking lot. But that footage shows, it has an angle on it that should allow us to see him in the prone position, setting up to fire. We don't see that part of the footage has not been given to us. So again, my point is, if you don't want us to theorize and say crazy, wild, nonsensical stuff, well, then give us the fucking footage. Show us what actually happened so that we don't have to guess. Tell us what the caliber of the ammunition was. Is that too much to ask? It shouldn't be. If you have footage of the guy actually getting into position and firing, which it looks like you should have that footage, put it out. Let us actually look. We've already seen horribly graphic footage of this attack. It's not like seeing him get in the prone position and fire is going to ruin it. It's not going to ruin your case in court. It's not going to ruin my mind or make it so that it's impossible for me to sleep. In fact, it would probably help me sleep because I would actually feel as if, oh, okay, then looks like they did get the guy. But you haven't shown us that. You're withholding information, and then you're lecturing us that we're demanding more information, to which I say, fuck off. No. Not going to stop asking. Not going to stop demanding, actually, because you work for me, or at least you're supposed to, theoretically. Anyways, point being, so we've got this major cancellation attempt against Candace Owens. There's major campaign to lie about her relationship with Charlie Kirk, saying that they're not friends, even though just less than a year ago, Charlie Kirk said this.
I want to actually talk about partnership. Candace Owens, we had her on the show.
Candace is the best.
And her new venture partnered with yours. But you guys used to work together.
Yeah, and we've known each other, boy, it'll be 7 years in November.
So where did you guys meet? How did the relationship grow? Did you guys bump heads in the beginning, or did you guys like each other?
She'll tell you the story exactly the same. I met her at the David Horowitz Freedom Center. David Horowitz is amazing. He's a legend in the conservative movement. And I heard her speak, and I offered her a job right when I met her. I was like, come work for us at Turning Point USA. And she was relatively unknown. She had about 45,000 Twitter followers. She was red pill black at the time at YouTube. And I basically said, if we work together for a couple of years, you're going to be the biggest thing in the conservative movement. Like, I've never seen talent like this.
Definitely sounds like they had a major falling out and he secretly hates her. Or when they lied and said, oh, she hasn't been involved with TPUSA in many years.
When's the last time you saw Candace Owens?
In person?
Yeah.
2015, 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No,
When's the last time she was at a Turning Point event?
Not in many years.
How can you say that I have not spoken at a Turning Point USA conference in years when I literally went on tour with Turning Point USA on college campuses last year? Yeah.
Fact check false. She was actually at multiple TPUSA events, which Charlie handpicked the bookings for in 2024, just last year. So yeah, this alleged falling out doesn't appear to be real. Now, does that mean that every claim that is made about their relationship is 100% true? No, it doesn't. But it does mean that she was telling more of the truth than her detractors were. And that should be remembered. They lied egregiously. She hasn't delivered the receipts, though. And for that, I will be critical. I think that she is doing a disservice to the broader investigation that all of us independent researchers are doing ourselves by not giving us that information. For instance, and here's what I think would be not necessarily a smoking gun, but a smoking gun when it comes to potential motive for an alternative suspect. And that is this. She claims that the $150 million offer was declined by Charlie Kirk, and she knows this factually. How do you know that? Do you have a copy of the contract from Netanyahu or his associates offered to Charlie Kirk or TPUSA that both shows those numbers and shows him declining? Do you have communications between you and Charlie that demonstrates that, in fact, yes, that offer was made legitimately, and yes, it was declined legitimately in the weeks leading to his death? That is super important information. Now, even if that did happen, which I tend to think it did,
Israel offered him $150 million to be more pro-Israel than they already were, to be harder in their support for Israel, and in particular, to support regime change in Iran. And Charlie Kirk refused the money. And I have independently confirmed that, by the way. I've heard that from 4 people. 4 people that I trust that are in the know. So this is coming from Candace Owens, a friend of Charlie Kirk. This is coming from Max Blumenthal, who purports to have a source. And I have heard from a handful of people independently of those sources that this offer was real and that Kirk turned down the money. After Charlie Kirk turned down the money, Netanyahu asked if he would come visit Jerusalem and give him the re-education tour. He refused that as well. They offered to bribe him. They tried to re-educate him. He refused both offers.
Does that mean that Bibi or Israel was responsible? No. But it definitely shows a case, and it definitely proves that Candace's narrative is far closer to the truth, including Ian and Tucker, when it comes to, yes, Charlie Kirk was having a change of heart when it came to the Israel topic. Because if not, it is odd that a guy who intends to continue carrying water would decline such a handsome offer for financial assistance to his organization, especially when he's under so much pressure and losing donors because he refuses to deplatform people like Tucker Carlson. And that ends with the final cancellation attempt, which has been going rapid fire for the past 24 to 48 hours, which is to deplatform Tucker Carlson. Haha, Again, good luck. I don't know how the fuck you're going to do that. His show is extraordinarily large. But anyways, that's the new push. So who has been attempted to be canceled? All of those people. Candace first, Ian secondarily, and then Tucker Carlson majorly. That's all over the past week or so. Okay, let's also extrapolate back. Let's talk about this. Mike Johnson has these are reports that just came out about a week ago, closed door meetings with Israeli talking heads or spokespeople, I should say. And what is their topic of discussion? That they are going to do everything in their power to vet Republican political candidates to make sure that we don't get more, let's say, foreign policy critical candidates like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Thomas Massie into the House of Representatives, because it's creating a major problem for them. So that's what happened about a week ago. And then you have an effort to attack and cancel Candace, Ian, Tucker.
Does seem like there is this intent with a faction on the right, and I'm not saying they get paid by Qatar, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did, that just wants to drive division between Jewish conservatives and Christian conservatives, and it seems so completely blatant, and I hope other people are seeing this.
When I look at what Candace is talking about on day-to-day, Tucker on day-to-day there, a lot of these other folks there, it is genuinely hard for me to conclude that they want any other result than the expulsion of the Jews from Spain, back in the time of Queen Isabella in the late 1400s. I mean, is that literally your end goal? I think the goal is definitely, it's unambiguously to drive a wedge between Christian conservatives like you and Jewish conservatives like me. That much is very clear. I think it's arguably even worse than that. They basically want a Juden-Rhine right. They want an American right that does not have any prominent Jews in it. And taken to its logical conclusion, I think it's probably not a far stretch to say they want a United States without any Jews in it either.
Now, what is the tie that binds between those five individuals? It's not that they're all lockstep on every single ideology. Far from it. There are actually lots of major differences of opinion. But they're all largely non-interventionists when it comes to foreign policy. And that is the tie that binds. That is the unspoken commonality that is putting them in the line of fire. And everyone's going to paint it as, they're all hateful and anti-Semitic and they're conspiracy theorists and this and that. Smears. These are smear merchants. These are propagandists that are trying to get people out of the way because they actually talk about the legacy of unconstitutional, illegal, immoral wars that largely destroyed the fabric of this country and ended countless millions of lives unnecessarily. And they're very hesitant to repeat those mistakes of the past. And for that, I say, God bless all of them. That is way more important than whether what you're doing is for clicks or not. I don't care. Where do you lead us? Where is your heart? Where are you actually taking us in the future? If you are trying to prevent World War III, if you are trying to prevent more wasted resources and lives, you're on my team. That's how I see it. Pretty straightforward. And I consider them all on my team in that regard. And coincidentally, all of those people are trying to be removed from power. And that includes Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Thomas Massie, most notably, because he's under the pressure of a couple billionaires that were named in the Epstein files that are funneling millions of dollars into hate and attack ads against him in his district. These are not coincidental similarities. This is a far-reaching, well-financed operation to try and unseat these people either from power or from positions of influence. And I think you would be very naive not to see it as it's happening. Tucker Carlson, all these stupid boomer smears that are being levied. It's just laughable, honestly. And if you're going to make me choose between Mark Levin and Laura Loomer or Tucker Carlson and Candace, it's not a hard choice. Not a hard choice at all. And I consider some of these people friends. Ian is a friend, for real. He's a good guy. He's a really good guy. Good heart. Doesn't mean that he gets everything right. Neither do I. He is a good guy, and I think he is headed in the right direction, that he wants the truth.
Subscribe to Liberty Lockdown. Great podcast. Clint is tight.
That's how I have always measured people. That's why I love Dave so much, because he and I have some difference of opinion, not many, but I just think that he's such a good dude. It's so obvious to me that truth comes before anything. It comes before party, maybe not his family, but it comes before party politics, libertarianism, the philosophy, any of that. Truth is what is paramount. That's how I operate too. That's what matters to me most, the truth. And to that end, that is why I pursue these things so doggedly. I wish that I could just go, oh man, Charlie Kirk got taken out? That's terrible. Thank God we have the FBI, which is obviously going to get the guilty party and We'll get the full details as to why he did it, who else he may have worked with, what was his motive, underlying motives too. And he'll spend the rest of his life behind bars. And there will be no copycats and knock-ons, because everybody knows that if you commit an act of political violence in this country, you go away. And you're not lionized. You're not going to have a bunch of people holding up posters and saying how great you were. None of that's going to happen, because the FBI comes down really hard on people like that. I don't have any faith in that. I would be literally an idiot if I thought that was how these things are going to play out. Now, I hope to be proven wrong, but until I actually know what the fuck happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, don't you dare tell me to not dig deeper. I dug really hard on the Butler attack, and I pressed as hard as I could. And there is still just a massive void in that story. We don't even have a motive. There's allegedly encrypted communications that come from the assassin, some foreign entities. We never got the contents of that. We don't have a fucking clue. Donald Trump doesn't talk about it. Everyone's just, that was so long ago. It was like 15 months ago. It was not that long ago. And people just move on. That cannot be the trend line in this country. We cannot have political assassinations or attempted assassinations that lead to successful political assassinations that just go unanswered, or have a patsy take the fall. Fuck all of that. What matters most is that this stops. You do not want to live in a country where that is commonplace, and it is becoming increasingly commonplace, and is directed towards one side of the aisle. So take it seriously. And if you think that me asking questions because I don't know for sure is in some way not taking this seriously, you have it totally inverted. In fact, you're not taking it seriously. You should be digging. If you think that I'm wrong, fucking dig on your own. Please. I'm not trying to pretend like I'm some authority on the truth here. I am just trying desperately to get to the truth. And whoever gets us to it, you're on my team. Today's episode is, as always, brought to you by MyPillow.com. Use promo code LOCKDOWN. Just get yourself some cozy stuff, okay? Mike Lindell is cool as hell. That rhymed. Didn't mean to. And these pillows are just tremendous. MyPillow.com, promo code LOCKDOWN. If you buy some, I get a little spiff. If you don't, doesn't matter. It's a good product, good company. And thanks for supporting me. MyPillow.com, promo code LOCKDOWN. If you want to support me directly, at Liberty LockPod on X, subscribe there. I'll follow you back. Pause. We've got major breaking news. I had basically a 40-minute episode that I had completely edited down, did all the post-production. It was perfect. It was beautiful. And then Descript it basically had an upload failure, and I lost everything. As a consequence, the episode that I was going to release today didn't get released, but because of that, I now have a bunch of additional information, which will definitely end this episode with more questions than answers, but also a bit more clarity. So I think it's worth doing. Candace Owens is going to upset some people, but again, she has some breaking news that I think is actually really valuable, potentially. And we're going to go over it. So let's do that right now.
Said that they observed that individual, the FBI saying that the shooter dropped onto the roof at 12:15 didn't make sense to him. He said earliest it was 12:22 that the individual ran across, set up, took the shot. And I said, well, you must have been there, because he then sends me I wanted to see all of the metadata of when he took that footage. And the metadata begins at 12:22 and goes into 12:23, the very minute that Charlie gets shot. And he says, yeah, I saw the shot. I had just stopped recording about 20 seconds before the shot rang out.
I have to pause it here because I need to give my standard disclaimers. This is anecdotal. We don't even know that Candace isn't being fed false information. So let's start there. She could be being lied to. And there are definitely people that want to destroy her reputation further, and I would not be surprised if that's the case. However, I have seen this footage. We've all seen this footage. It's not the best quality, but it does show someone identifying that there is someone on a rooftop that is overlooking the position where Charlie Kirk was ultimately attacked. So it's worth noting, if in fact she was able to contact the person who took that footage, and if this is their testimony, and if they are correct about their assumptions as to what they saw, this is incredibly important. This might be the most important testimony that we've come across so far. And the reason it's so important is because it comes in stark contrast to what the FBI has been telling us. It also would answer why it is that, despite there being rooftop footage that would include the actual perch, the actual spot from which the prone sniper took the shot, we have not seen that footage. We've seen a man whoever it may be, running across a rooftop, descending with a gun, which we can't see, and then walking/running across the lawn and making his getaway. But that footage starts after the shot has already been taken. We still don't have footage of him actually taking that shot. So there's a missing gap here. And the reason it's really important, other than all of what I just detailed, which obviously is very important, but also because the description of the person on the rooftop is different, which would imply that in fact there was a second person on that rooftop, if he's accurate. That's hugely important. So let's hear what she has to say.
And he said that he told them a description of what the shooter looked like, and it was not the description that the entire world received less than 24 hours later of this person, Tyler Robinson, wearing jeans. I said, was he wearing jeans? He said, no. Actually, this person was dressed in tactical gear and he was wearing a face mask. And he said, according to him, and like I said, he has a lot of experience with guns, that this person looked to him like a foreign agent. I don't know if he's wearing all black, how he got that, but he said he was very certain that this person was skilled, knew exactly what he was doing, and was highly trained, like a highly trained assassin, so to speak. Okay.
If there is a second person on that rooftop, because I'm going to assume that there was not a second shooter, given that there was only one shot that was fired. Sure, perhaps there could be two people up on the rooftop also in sniper position and only one of them fires. That doesn't really make sense. Why would you set up an operation like that? If you're going to make sure that you take out your target, you would both fire and make sure that you actually get the job done. I'm sorry to be so grim about it, but that's how these people think. The really notable aspect of this is that they're wearing completely different clothing from anything that Tyler has ever been seen in on that day. So that would imply it is not Tyler Robinson, that this was someone different, someone else. Also, he then goes on to detail the fact that the firearm utilized is not the Mauser, that it is, in fact, a short barrel of some variety. And he goes into detail, and I think it's kind of a stretch to assume that you can tell what type of rifle was being utilized based off of the sound. However, if you've ever shot, which I'm sure most of you have, you already know that there are distinct sounds that come from different firearms. And I think his point is well taken, that a Mauser would have a deeper sound, the hunting rifle sound, as opposed to a shorter barrel. And his assumption was that, in fact, this was a .223, which is exactly what I theorized in the beginning of this episode, that perhaps if it's not a 30-06, then the idea of the bullet being lodged in Charlie's neck makes more sense, because it wouldn't have the same force and same speed. It would be just a different round and the same destructive capacity that a 30-06 does.
The gun that the FBI found was not the gun that he saw. That the gun that he saw was smaller. And I'm going to read you directly a text message that he sent me, again, protecting his identity. He said, watching the video of the impact, hearing the sharp crack instead of a big hunting rifle's boom, and seeing what looked like a shorter rifle platform, albeit with the absence of the shape of a standard 30-round magazine, the assassin may have used a 10 or 20-round magazine, only expecting to shoot once or twice. I would guess that he was shot with a Hornady V Max or similar lightweight 223 bullet designed for very rapid expansion. Of course, I don't have access to any autopsy reports like you might, but if they found small shards of copper rather than one large copper-coated lead slug, that's the gun and bullet I would expect was used.
So I think that opens up, or perhaps could answer some of the questions that we had as to what was actually utilized. What is the murder weapon? Because I think a lot of people are struggling, as Rogan, I opened up this episode with, Rogan is mystified as to the story that we're being told, that he dismantles the gun on the rooftop and then leaves and then puts it back together just to ditch it. But also the tool that he used to dismantle it was left on the rooftop. And that's how they connected the dots between Tyler, because they verified the DNA on the towel that was wrapped around the rifle, but also the screwdriver that was left on the rooftop. But how do you put the rifle back together if you don't have the screwdriver, which is left on the rooftop? But you didn't put the rifle back together on the rooftop because you left in mere seconds after the shot rings out. So as you can tell, there are inconsistencies here. Some of it's going to be explicable, obviously, especially if we were to get the full length footage of that rooftop. That would answer so much. And yet we don't have it. Now, as I said, this is one guy's opinion. We have absolutely no idea if he's right. But I just wanted to explain what he's describing. Hornady VMAX is a Varmint Express Remington ammo 55 grain VMAX polymer tip. So his assumption, or what he's guessing at, is that this is the type of ammunition that would have been utilized in the attack. So take it for what it's worth. It's one person's opinion, and we certainly can't use that as firm evidence. But these are the questions that have to be answered. These are the questions that the FBI tends to ignore, which is exactly the reason that I say that it's very important that we continue to push, because if we don't, they're going to close this case and they're just going to pack it up. They're going to say, we got our guy and that's all that there is to it. But that's not all there is to it. The holes in this story are extraordinary. And just to give you more evidence as to why my concern, or what some people would describe as paranoia, I don't think it is. I think it's totally well justified. We had Redacted, who reported today that, in fact, they intend to close this case within days.
This is confirmed, by the way, at the highest levels, that this is about to happen. The FBI, according to my source, is about to wrap up their investigation into the assassination of Charlie Kirk. They're done. And they are set to announce that Tyler Robinson is the lone gunman. End of story. Move along. Nothing to see here.
Now, again, this is one person's opinion, and they're doing it off of an anonymous source, and it's a high-level source, so I can't verify it. But would you be surprised? Would you be surprised if they just say, case closed, especially after just yesterday, you've got Kash Patel coming out saying, oh, we're basically exhausting all resources. We're going after all possible additional suspects and co-conspirators and blah, blah, blah. And then, a week later, they close the case. I wouldn't be surprised at all. So that's the whole reason that I'm going to keep pushing, is because we can't have that. That cannot be how this plays out, that we just go, there's all these massive holes in this story, and we have an eyewitness that's saying that the assailant was in fact wearing different attire. And by the way, if there's anybody on that rooftop that is wearing all black, that's almost certainly your guy, right? I mean, you're not going to be on a rooftop laying prone in all black, and it sounded like he had a face mask on. That would be your guy. Almost certainly that's your dude, right? So show us the fucking rooftop footage. If you want me to stop here, you have to show me that footage. You have to. Until I see that, until I actually see the guy who is allegedly Tyler, it still wouldn't be fully convincing that it is in fact Tyler, but at least show me the guy that you say is the shooter, who's shown in that video running across the rooftop and descending. Show me him getting in prone position and firing. Is that too much to ask? Just show it. And if you can't show me that, well, then this eyewitness's testimony is super important. And if he's not being talked to by Kash or whoever the lead investigator is on the scene, that is malpractice of the highest order. And malpractice to the point that you're going to have to start to ask real questions about whether or not there's a cover-up going on. And I don't want to ask that. I don't want to think that, especially given that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino knew Charlie Kirk. That's really hard for me to imagine, that they would just let this young man have his life taken and then not genuinely tug at every thread in this story to make sure that they have it right. But I don't have any faith in them. They have looked as if they're deer in headlight, scared for their lives, and I don't have any trust. I don't see any reason why I should. So we need answers. We need answers big time. Got another update that's important. This is Andrew Clavin, who's the guy who gives us this unbelievable story about his Man of Steel neck and all that. He did a podcast today where he discusses some of the questions as to Charlie's conversion or difference of opinion when it comes to Israel, things of that nature. So let's hear what he has to say.
Was Charlie offered $150 million from Israel?
As far as I know, no.
I had never heard anything like that. Everyone I've asked has said the same thing.
And by the way, just for what it's worth, it doesn't matter the amount that would have been coming down. We would have said no.
And there's evidence that is true.
Turning Point does not, Charlie would not accept foreign money.
Exactly.
We only took American money.
Need to make a clarifying point on that, because I think that there's a misunderstanding as to how these funding sources work and how the leverage might be applied. Notably, Christian Zionism has kind of the same mission statement, right? They have it for different reasons, but regardless, there's still a demand for unyielding loyalty to the nation state of Israel. So just because they weren't Jewish doesn't mean that they weren't Christian Zionist. I think that the most notable aspect of what he's saying is not anything of the specifics other than the fact that essentially what he's confirming is that Tucker, Candace, these other people have been right. They've been telling the truth that yes, he was losing donors as a consequence of his willingness to continue to platform Tucker Carlson, as if you can platform a guy who's much more famous and successful than you.
A couple things that it's worth clarifying. You know, and you asked me this earlier, so let me make sure I'd say it. Charlie's position on Israel was very clear. I like them more than I like Hamas. I just wish I was free to criticize Israel and not be labeled an anti-Semite, because I can criticize my own government and not be called anti-American. He basically said, I don't appreciate being morally blackmailed. And, you know, and every time people would say that to him, he would dig his heels in. It's like, well, maybe Tucker's going to give 2 speeches now at AmFest.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll invite so-and-so.
I think that this is confirmation. It's true. And also his frustrations with the fact that he couldn't tell the truth about how he felt about what was going on with that war. And he was frustrated. So there you go. That's all confirmation. Now, that doesn't confirm to the highest levels of Candace's allegations that he was converting to Catholicism and, you know, the kind of hints that he was about to flip totally on Israel and start to really get honest about it and just blast him. But I never really thought that was the case anyways. I think he was just trying to walk the tightrope. The base is like, they're younger and they're looking at what's happening over there and they don't like it. And they have really awoken to what's going on with that. And he's trying to balance that with kind of the older, which is the donor class is almost certainly older. And their inclination is to be much more deeply aligned with Israel and to basically bite their tongue when it comes to anything that they're doing that they might think is wrong. And he's trying to find that middle ground where he satisfies his donors, but simultaneously keeps his base listening to him, because his influence will diminish rapidly if he loses the young people. That's the whole value of his operation. So they're at an impasse. And it's a paradox. How do I keep my funding and my base? I can keep one or the other, but I can't keep both. And if I lose the funding, I lose the operation to keep the base. So he's stuck. And I think that is the real story at the end of the day, is that he recognized that conundrum and he was challenged by it. He was struggling with it. So I don't think you have to go to like deep, dark conspiracies on that one. The real variable that matters most in all of this discussion and debate and discovery and investigation is, was he in fact offered $150 million to essentially abandon his base and to just stick with the donor side of these things? TBD. The $150 million offer, it almost certainly wouldn't come from the government of Israel. It would come from an American Zionist donor. So that's normally how these things are structured, so that you don't deal with either FARA violations, which are never actually prosecuted when it comes to Israel, but it would be a conduit for that influence and for that money to be legal and also be not as directly connected, so that it wouldn't draw the hackles of the base. I don't think that that's answering the question, honestly. Now, he could be right. Maybe that offer didn't happen, but there's a lot of people saying that it did. And I don't think that that is enough of a testimony to it, especially when he says, not to my knowledge. Like, that is, he's leaving himself plenty of wiggle room to get out of that one if it turns out that, in fact, there was a $150 million offer being made and it wasn't coming directly from Bibi Netanyahu or directly from the government of Israel, but it did come from someone who's very much aligned with that cause. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah.
With the whole Charlie Kirk thing and the reporting that you've been doing on it, where are you right now? Like, what do you think the story is here? What do you think is important for people to understand about this?
Well, I'm working on a news story, and it's pretty much along the same lines as all the other stories I've been reporting, which is that, in the days and weeks before his death, Charlie Kirk was facing not just increasing Zionist pressure as the date approached of his first appearance on his campus-wide cross-country tour, but that actually he was bleeding Zionist donations. And I got the name of a major donor who apparently pulled out.
I watched the entirety of that interview of Max Blumenthal with Dave Smith. Highly recommended. As soon as you're done watching this, please hop over to Part of the Problem and check that out, because it's well worth your time. And it was very, Very well done. Congrats, Dave. Very great job. But I just thought that was, it seems quite obvious. Yes, the pressure was real. Yes, he was hemorrhaging donors. Yes, there was Zionist donors that were the ones that were withdrawing funds. That's true. That doesn't mean that they're Jewish, okay? That's a very clear distinction, and I think Max Blumenthal uses that word specifically because he's not saying that they were Jewish donors. He's not saying that they were from Israel or anything like that. That's a nuance that it's very important that people recognize when we're talking about this stuff. I did want to cover briefly this Barry Weiss interview with this former Mossad, or I don't even, probably active Mossad, with this PR tour that this Mossad guy's on, which is not making them look very good.
Okay, we're going to do a quick lightning round. Was Jeffrey Epstein a Mossad?
No.
Not an agent, not an operative,
no,
nothing.
Nothing.
Why do people believe that he was?
The people believe that Mossad has created the tsunami. People believe, I mean, just right now, that we have been behind Charlie Kirk's assassination. False. We don't do that. We never will. We never did.
That's going to be your new editor-in-chief over at CBS News. Real hard-hitting stuff there. You ask a question of a literal paid propagandist, they give you an answer that denies everything. You don't dig deeper, and that's it. Open and shut case. Thank you, Barry. Tremendous work. That's exactly why she's getting the big bucks. And that's why she's taking over CBS. Oh, my goodness. And also this whole assumption that, oh, we don't do that, we would never do that. Look, I'm not saying that they're responsible for Charlie Kirk. I have no idea. But to pretend as if Mossad is not world famous for their capacity for assassinations, and if they're not the top nation when it comes to doing things like that, they're top 3 for sure. It's just insulting. It's unbelievably insulting. We don't do that. We would never do that. It's like, get the fuck out of here, dude. When you lie that egregiously, it makes me think like, oh, well, then maybe you did, dude. Maybe you did. Because I know that you're capable of it. I'm not saying you did it, but to pretend that you would never. We don't do those types of things. Bullshit. You fucking liar. Unbelievable lying scumbag. And fuck Barry Weiss for having that dude on the show and just letting him lie straight to her face. This is going to be the future of mainstream media. We're going to replace the old liars with younger liars in Barry Weiss. It's just disgusting. I can't believe that anyone takes this stuff seriously. I'm going to leave the Charlie Kirk investigation stuff there. I think we've covered as much of the new information as we have. Still a tremendous amount of open questions that need answers, and I will continue to dig on this because I think it's vitally important. I'm not going to do the whole recap as to why. If you're still watching, you already know my heart's in the right place. I'm not doing this for the wrong reasons. I hope that's clear at this point. But there is a big story that just broke in the past couple hours that is super important and very, very dangerous, and I would be remiss not to discuss it, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to play a clip from Lindsey Graham in just a second, but first, the major update is that this was a Trump Truth Social post, and in which, now granted, his defenders, Trump's defenders, are already coming out saying, oh, that was written by Sebastian Gorka, this isn't Trump, blah, 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 blah. Look, it came from Trump's personal Truth Social, so I'm going to attribute it to the guy whose name is on the post. Is that fair? I think it's fair. If he doesn't stand by it, he should come out and correct the record immediately because it's unbelievably reckless. But just to give you kind of a encapsulation of what he says in it, because it's a very lengthy post, I'm not going to read the whole thing. He just says, essentially, he believes that after doing further research, he believes that Ukraine can win the war against Russia and that they intend to, or at least he's encouraging them to not just take back the eastern portion of Ukraine, to not just reclaim the original borders prior to the invasion of Ukraine, but also to take aggressive action and to take territory from Russia. It's hard for me to put into words how bizarre and just unbelievably reckless that is. I don't have words for it. This is the largest nuclear power on Earth. In terms of nuclear arsenal, they actually have more nuclear weapons than the United States. Not like that matters, because once you get north of 1,000 nuclear weapons, that's the end of humanity anyways. For the life of me, I can't understand why an American president would be talking about this so flippantly, that you would encourage them not just to continue to fight and to take back their own territory, which if you want to say that, that's no different from Biden. I didn't agree with it. I think that you should be working towards peace and accepting the reality of this fight, because the Ukrainians are hemorrhaging soldiers and they're barely able to find replacements, and they've basically absorbed all of the 25 to 45-year-olds off the streets and put them on the front lines to their destruction. So I would like to see it end for that reason. But just moreover, I don't think it's winnable. I cannot envision any world in which Ukraine takes back the East, much less takes portions of Russia as well. One, without nukes being fired, or two, without NATO troops and American troops specifically assisting in that fight and actually fighting and dying on behalf of Ukraine. Moreover, I cannot recognize any value to me, to America, in that process. None. So just a very important clarification. Trump does not say that he's sending American troops or anything like that. He just says that we're going to continue to sell whatever munitions NATO wants for the purposes of NATO then delivering those munitions to Ukraine. So this is the workaround that we're not in direct conflict with Russia, allegedly, but we are a co-belligerent by any reasonable analysis. We are absolutely a co-belligerent in this war, and it's just so dangerous. It's so unbelievably dangerous, and we've been on this path for years now, and there is no adult in the room. And I think my biggest frustration with it, obviously, is that, well, one, I voted for Trump, and I even said, I told you guys in the episode where I made that decision that it was primarily because Joe Biden and his entire, Antony Blinken, the entire State Department under Joe Biden had not picked up the fucking phone and tried to work out a peace deal, and they had no interest in peace, and they wanted this war to last as long as possible, and they wanted to escalate it. And I just thought it was so dangerous that I had no choice. They had to be taken out of power. And simultaneously, inversely, Trump was saying the right things. He was talking about how, peace on day one. I can absolutely end this war. I can negotiate peace. And then a month ago, he has the meeting with Putin, and allegedly it went well. And now I guess he's decided, no, there is no path for peace when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. And it's just so dangerous. Let's hear what fucking Lindsey Graham, scumbag lunatic, has to say.
Trump 2028. I hope this never ends. When he asks, what should you do if a Russian jet flies into your country? Shoot it down. He's tried to go out of his way to get Putin to the table. We don't want to humiliate Russia. We just want to end the war. And to our friends in Russia, here's what Trump did today. He told NATO, I'll sell you all the weapons you want. You can provide them to Ukraine. And as to Ukraine, you can use them any way you want. So to the Russian military, you're going to be up against the high-end American weapons that will be sold to NATO for the benefit of Ukraine. And this war is coming to your backyard here with no limitations like Biden.
And with that, I will rest my case. When Lindsey Graham is that ecstatic, nearly orgasmic, you know that we're way off the path of any level of sanity. If Lindsey Graham is happy, something has gone terribly wrong in the Trump administration. So that's where I'm at with it. And I'm perilously close to regretting voting for Trump and supporting him at all. I just think that this is so fucking dangerous. I will say I was thrilled that there was real discussions as to the causes behind autism, and they are actually leaving the door open for genuine inquiry into arenas that I'm not even allowed to talk about, that I think are worth studying further, to put it mildly. And, given how many people are suffering from that, and how the parents, who over half of which think that there's a certain commonly prescribed substance that is the cause for that, over half of them believe that that's what caused their child's autism. Over half. I had never seen that before. And the fact that there's that many parents dealing with that, and over 50% of them believe that it came from that. And the fact that the government just told them, we don't care what you think, as if they wouldn't be the most reputable people to have an opinion on this, seeing as they saw their kid be normal and then have that shift, and to just have their opinion scoffed at and be humiliated on top of having your child, damaged in such a fashion. I can't imagine what that feels like. So my heart goes out to you guys, and I hope that gave you some hope that there might be some genuine inquiry and some truth in this arena, because God knows we've needed it. So anyways, I just wanted to say that is the one silver lining that I'm still seeing from the Trump administration. aside from that, it's few and far between. I mean, we don't get truth on Epstein. There's no peace in Gaza. There's no pulling back on funding when it comes to the war in Gaza or support for Israel. There's no pulling back on funding when it comes to the support for Ukraine. Apparently, they're going to continue to sell. I guess it's selling versus giving. So there's a minor improvement, but he's now telling them to take territory from Russia. He bombed Iran. I mean, the laundry list of obvious, not just failures, but also obvious lies from who he is now versus what his campaign promises were. And yet I still would argue, the majority of his base is fully on board and they love everything he's doing. And I'm just not one of them. I would be lying if I pretended as if everything's going great. It's not. To say that there's room for improvement really doesn't do it justice. It has been very irritating. Very. And I think most honest observers would have to agree, even if you don't agree to the full extent that I'm criticizing them. I think that we can all be honest that this is not what we were hoping for. And with that, I will leave you. But I do appreciate you guys. I did want to give a quick update on another reason that I've been delaying over the past couple of weeks with some of these episodes. This is a personal matter, but I wanted to give my dad my best wishes, and I wanted to tell a quick story to him because he loves the show and he watches it all the time and listens to it. He just recently was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I love him very much. I'm going to do this without crying. I'm going to find a way. He is so much the reason I am who I am, and not obviously just because he's my dad and created me, but rather because of his ideology, his philosophy. I've told, for those that are longtime fans, he was actually a guest on my show in, I think, the first 10 episodes before I even had video. It was just audio. And, so some of you are already aware of this. Most of you aren't, because there was like no one listening back then. And there's a lot of people listening now. He was a libertarian. He discovered the philosophy in the 70s before I was born. And as a child, he lived in Ridgecrest, California. He had actually foreclosed on a gym in Ridgecrest and converted it into a nightclub, a fine dining restaurant and nightclub in Ridgecrest, California, this bumfuck desert town. I mean, talk about swinging out of your boots. I don't know what he was thinking with that, but he did it. And because of that, I was obviously living with my mom and my stepdad in San Diego. So it was like a 5 or 6 hour drive. I can't remember exactly. I was, 5 years old, so I don't remember. But we would take these extraordinarily long car trips, round trip. I would only see him, I think it was one weekend a month. And we would take these 5-hour car trips in his Nissan 300ZX, which ended up being my first car with 200,000 miles on it, which immediately the engine blew up and cost me a fortune. And it was a catastrophe. But I love that car. And I think in part I loved it, other than the fact that it was a really cool car, because it was my dad's and it meant a lot to me. And we would do these 5-hour road trips. And during those road trips in that Z, he would tell me about the founding fathers and why freedom and liberty are so rare and so special. And I would just pepper him with questions the whole time, and he was telling me about basically libertarianism as a 5-year-old. And we would talk about, the Constitution and why free speech matters and why gun rights matter, and just very advanced discussions for a 5-year-old. It definitely explains why I am who I am and how I am. I have a very unique worldview, and I think it's because I began so early in that process. But I think, despite the fact I didn't get to spend a tremendous amount of time with my dad growing up, I did get quality time. Those 10 hours per month of just driving, just he and I alone, and having conversations were very formative. They've really established my worldview, my mind, my outlook, my logic, my rationale. They inspired me in many ways. And I'm so appreciative that I had that time. And I'm so appreciative of him. Then when I got out of college, I went and I worked for him for a couple of years. And obviously that helped, even more deeply ingrain kind of his business acumen, his economic outlook, his worldview. Certainly helped expedite my learning scale, given that he had decades of experience and I was relatively new to that world. And as a result of that, I had a very successful career as an entrepreneur doing a similar thing. And I just think that, obviously without him, I'm not me on many levels. And I don't know how much time we have left together, and it hurts to even say those words. But I wanted to put it on wax. I wanted there to be a record of how much you matter. And I'm very fortunate that I live so close to you. And I spend all day today going around to hospitals with you. And if there's anything that we can do to extend your life, we will do it, obviously. And I don't know how much time we have, but I will spend as much of it with you as I can. And regardless of how much time we spend in your remaining days, I just want to express how deeply I love you. There's going to be some editing on this one, I can tell. But for my audience's sake, I'm sorry to bombard you with personal stories, but I hope, I've told my brother this, I have, to hug our stepdad extra tight. Shout out to Charlie. He's amazing too. And I hope that you guys this definitely puts into perspective how important your parents are and how fleeting life is and how much of a struggle it is. It's a real paradox in that you never want your parent to die, and you obviously want it to be painless when they do. But there is also just this weird paradox where if you get a diagnosis, that means that you're dying and that it's coming somewhat soon. It does enable all of your loved ones to express to you how much you matter to them. And if you just drop dead and it's painless, you don't get that. And there's pain as a result of not being able to express those things that you wish you had. So I guess what I'm saying is that there's a silver lining on both sides. There's a silver lining either way. It's painless, but you don't get to express the things that you wish you had, or it's painful, but you do. Life is pain, man. It's pain. But the reason it's so painful is because life is so beautiful, that it's so filled with love. And that's why it hurts. And for that reason, I'm incredibly appreciative to be alive and to have experienced all of these years with him. And obviously, I don't know how much time we have left, and maybe there will be years. And God willing, I also wanted to say I have been praying a lot. And I've been experiencing something with prayer that I never have before, which is I get chills when I do it. And I don't know if that's a common phenomenon for people, but for me, it's very novel and very new. So I guess in that regard, I'm appreciative for this process. I'm appreciative that I get to spend so much time with him and to strengthen my relationship with God too. I wanted to express these things, obviously, because they're important to me, but also I wanted him to hear it. I think this will be meaningful to him, but I also wanted you guys to take whatever emotions it imbues in you and use that to improve your relationships in your life. And I hope it helps. Love you guys. Bye.
Subscribe to Liberty Lockdown. Great podcast. Clint is tight.